We want to look at one of the word problems that you have on your review sheet for exam 6. Let's look at that first one. This is what it says. The number of people n, so n represents people, the number of people. The number of people n who are sick t days after the outbreak of a flu epidemic. So t represents days. The number of people n who are sick t days after the outbreak of a flu epidemic can be determined using the polynomial equation n equals -3t squared plus 25t plus 50. So in this equation, n represents the number of people who are sick t days after the flu epidemic outbreak. How many days have passed since the outbreak of the epidemic if there are 100 people who are sick? If there are 100 people, that's the n value, isn't it? So they've told us the n value. And they want us to figure out how many days have passed since the outbreak in order for there to be 100 people who are sick. So we need to solve this quadratic equation. We know it's a quadratic equation because the highest power of the variable is 2. We need then to put this equation in standard form. It's not in standard form right now. We don't have 0 on one side of the equation. Not only that, I don't like this negative coefficient for my squared term. Having a negative coefficient makes it a little more complicated to factor the polynomial. So let's first start by subtracting subtracting 100 from both sides so as to make this side of the equation 0. If I subtract 100 from both sides, that's what my equation would become, wouldn't it? 100 minus 100 would give me 0. Subtracting 100 from plus 50 would give me minus 50. Now, I want to get rid of that negative coefficient. Well, look what would happen. Look what would happen if I were to multiply this side of the equation by -1. Of course, I'd have to multiply this side of the equation by -1 as well. But that's all right. -1 times 0 is still 0. I would have to distribute this multiplication of -1 times each of those terms. And remember what that negative is going to do to every term inside the parentheses? It's going to make its sign the opposite. -1 times -3t squared will be positive 3t squared. -1 times plus 25t will be minus 25t. -1 times minus 50 will be plus 50. And that enabled me to get rid of the negative coefficient. Now it will be easier to factor that polynomial. There's no common factor, so that's going to factor into the product of two binomials. Since that's a plus and this is a minus, our two signs in our binomials need to be minus. 3t squared, well, that would be 1t times 3t. 50, oh wow, we've got quite a few possibilities for 50. 1 times 50, 2 times 25, 5 times 10. And one of those needs to give us the minus 25t. Well, here's the arrangement that would do that. If we put t there, 3t there. If we put the 5 here, that's going to give us 15. If we put the 10 there, that's going to give us 10 under the oofoil. So minus 10 under the oofoil, minus 15 under the iofoil gives us minus 25t that we need. Now here's our solutions then. T could equal 5, because 5 minus 5 would give us 0. 0 times anything would be 0. Or 3t minus 10 could equal 0. And if 3t minus 10 were to equal 0, then 3t would equal 10, or t would equal 10 thirds, which is 3 than 1/3. And again, what was T representing? T was representing the days since the outbreak of the flu epidemic. So when will there be 100 people sick with the flu? 3 1/3 days after the outbreak, or 5 days after the outbreak. And it's always important to put some words with the numbers to make your answer meaningful when you're solving a word